So, may I start, Victor?
Yes, go ahead.
Obviously, it was a busy end of last week, or a busy week in terms of the launch of Revolution. I feel like the launch of Revolution itself is almost behind us, with Conston launching live, people starting to understand how the delegation on subnet 0 to subnets works. We all understood how it worked in theory. We were all a little confused as to why people might delegate to subnet 0 and recycle and not. And then on Wednesday or Thursday, I believe, Creative, who will be joining us shortly, Creative Builds, dropped the image subnet on us. And to be honest, it wasn't a big surprise. There he is, Mr. Housework himself. Because it had been on a testnet for quite some time. It had Tau Studio running off it. I had a couple of weeks ago encouraged people to go over there and play and set up miners. And we knew what it did. We knew what it was going to offer. We knew what was required when it came online. So in terms of the subnet itself, it seemed to be something to get behind quite quickly. Now, some of this debriefing is factual, and some of it will be interjected with opinion. I will try and sort of differentiate between the two. One of the first things we noticed as soon as it went live was immediately it was very difficult to get keys. So one of the things we're going to talk about is the registration process for subnets, what it was, what it is, and how we can how I feel we should deal with this, and potentially other people may have other ideas, but a bit of a debriefing. So the way the subnet was launched was that there were 3 registrations per interval, and an interval is 100 blocks, which is 50 minutes, I believe. Shout if I'm wrong. There's no timer on that, though. You don't know when those 100 blocks are about to run out. I mean, you could watch the Block Explorer and work it out. So what happens is people that get in there first can register keys. They started off at 0.25 tau, went up after the first interval to 0.5, to 1 tau, to 2 tau, to 4 tau, to 8 tau. You can see where this was going. Every three registrations, it was going up. Now, I personally was under the impression this was the only way to register, but it turns out that proof of work was also left on. Proof of work is something that we had in the olden days of subnet 1, which was then switched off. It's the ability to use GPUs to solve a puzzle, essentially, hash, and generate your registration that way. The reason it was turned off on subnet 1 was that people had found ways to optimize the script and were using it to their advantage or unfairly to register more keys than anyone else. And it wasn't seen as a fair, open entry into networks. And so it was replaced with proof of work and then dropped altogether. So with recycle register and then dropped altogether. I was informed halfway through this registration process that proof of work was still on. I didn't have any success with it. I know some people that had some minimal success with it, but keys were getting registered. Now, what then happened is that incentive was assigned to the subnet, and there were not that many validators on there. Validators have to make a choice. Is it financially viable for them to validate on a subnet? And are they, and if a validator is making less than 16 or 32, or it even went up to 64 tau a day, they may not want to part with those funds or have them available to register. So they stood back. So what happened was the validators that had got in there early enough were sharing between them the dividends for all validators, which led to a big discrepancy in the APR, which is still slightly visible, although just before this call, the foundation have joined Subnet 5, and things have now gone much more back to an equilibrium. I spoke to Const about this, had a little debrief there, and as a result, his announcement yesterday with changes to the process. In fact, it was quite a hefty chunk of announcements, and they were that the subnet limit was increased to 32. The proof of work has been turned off for all newly created subnets as well as the existing ones. The subnet tempo was reduced from 1,000 to 360 blocks. This one I think is more about the reduction in the cost to register a subnet. And then a few others, about registering a subnet. So now registration, in theory, should be fairer. That said, if anyone has been trying to register for the recently created subnet 3, if you're like me, you're just trying to grab a key, you'll note that you can't get on. It keeps saying all registrations are full for this interval. Interestingly enough, the price, though, has not gone up. It remains at 0.14 tau. I haven't managed to register a key. I don't know, has anyone here managed to register via Recycle Register since it launched? There's 30 or so keys. It's now just about ready to see on Tau Stats. Lucky you. There you go. At least someone has. Luckily, I had registered the key before. So what this, and this part is opinion for me. I feel that the image subnet was a bit of an exception because we knew what it did and it had been live as a subnet before within the testnet. So it was clear that we were ready to get miners onto it, and we wanted to sort of fill it up so that we could get Tau Studio back online and any other image apps that may launch on it. However, it's still facing the problem that it's still not full. And filling up a subnet takes time, especially when you're limited to 3 registrations per interval. So in my opinion, I believe, especially with some of these new subnets, that emissions should potentially be limited, not by any code, just by the choice of the validators, to allow a subnet to sort of fill up and get working, and to have a sort of a cold start period where things can be tested without implications where issues in code or issues in someone setting weights before someone else can cause large discrepancies in incentive and dividends and rewards, which is something that did happen over the weekend on a number of miners. Again, it's evened itself out. And I feel that's one of the solutions and discussion amongst the validators to take it easy, I think, with a new subnet. I don't know, no one in the comments agrees or disagrees, but looking at this new subnet 3 that's just launched, it doesn't have any GPU requirements. So for miners, they are very small costs to run, if any. So we don't need to throw large amounts of incentive at it, of emissions at it, in order for it to fill up. And it's worth allowing it to fill up and allowing the validator or the subnet owner to come forward and state the value, and also puts a little bit less pressure, because I'm sure Creative would agree, and I'm going to let him take over in a minute from his side as to what it was like. That it can be quite a lot of stress when you are fixing issues on the fly with large amounts of tau at stake for any discrepancies in how things are working. Ooh, I'm talking. So, with no further ado, I'm going to bring Creative to the floor, who can tell us a little bit about the image subnet, where he is now, where it's going over the next couple of weeks, and what to expect.
Thank you. Yeah, so image subnet's been doing pretty well. I know you said it was might be stressful for new subnet owners to fix things on the fly, but honestly, I didn't find it too stressful. It was just the average job I'm normally doing with Tau Studio and everything breaking over there. So it is what it is. But yeah, image subnet, where it's going over the next couple of weeks. So it's been a good start so far. Miners have been doing well. We had that little hiccup over the weekend with some, like you said, some miners getting abnormally high incentive, but that did end up balancing out once validators updated to the latest version. What I've noticed, though, from miners' side recently is a lot of miners are actually running the same exact comfy UI workflow, like the default one that I supply, and also the same model. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to be updating the validator so that it can detect which miners are using the same model, and it will give a slight penalty to those miners, probably around a 15% weight difference, because obviously we don't want the entire network or like half of the miners on the network supplying the same type of images. We want a diverse set of different images coming in, different types of quality. And then also on that note, the thing that's determining the quality on the miners is the validator's image reward model. So right now, the image reward model is just a singular model that we pulled off this GitHub repo image reward, and they have like a paper describing like what their model is about and how it ranks things. But I find that while it's decent, it does, you can notice like if you grade all the images from best score to least score, there is a gradient where, yeah, the top images are better. But I would say, like, for Tau Studio purposes, right? Like, if I queried 25 miners and I just return the top 4 images, usually the images I like are within the top 10 images, but they aren't necessarily the top 4 images. So in order to fix that, I'm going to be working with Technium. He's not in here right now, but he says that it should be viable to create a type of LoRa model for the reward model. And this would be like a small model that you train. Each validator could train their own. It should only take around like maybe 50 images, and you have the image reward model essentially shift its rewards so that it more closely aligns with the aesthetic preferences of the validator owner. And then once we get more customized aesthetic preferences from validators, that's when we can see like more miners getting rewards for providing like different aesthetics to the network. So I'm very excited about getting that online, and that should take like I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks. And then Victor here says, couldn't the diversity score detect the same model being used? And the diversity score should, but the thing is, it doesn't give the same seed to all miners. So it detects like the same stylistic differences between images. But if we give the same seed to miners, then you'll get the same exact image back. And that's way easier to tell if miners are using the same model or not. So, well, I expect that if I implement that system too early, though, then miners will basically disregard the seed entirely to produce a unique image. So I'm also going to implement a system that basically will retry a validate or retry a miner for the same image. So say like an hour ago, a validator queried your miner for a dog sitting on the moon with a 768 by 768 size. So your miner gives back a specific image, and the validator will have to hold on to that like image hash and the description and the seed and everything. It'll save it in like a local database. And then every once in a while, it'll query out to your miner again and say, hey, give me a dog sitting on the moon with this exact seed. And your miner has to give back the same exact image. And if it doesn't, then it gets penalized. So that way it gets around miners like disregarding the seed entirely, and it enforces the seed to be the same. And then Victor also says, what model is being used by the default? And the default model we recommend, well, not that we recommend, just the one that's inside of the workflow is Roxel, which is a Stable Diffusion XL model. But I don't necessarily recommend running that model because obviously other miners are already running it. So you're better off going to Civi AI. I'll put the link here in chat. And that website has a bunch of different Stable Diffusion models. you can go through and find what aligns with your aesthetic preferences. So just mess around, load up a comfy UI instance, download the models, and have a play around with it, see what you like. And then he says, if different validators have different preferences, would it not hurt vtrust? It may, but I don't think it'll hurt it to the point like vtrust. The way I understand it is like if one validator is saying UIDs 1 through 5 are really good, but 6 through 10 are really bad. So I'm going to give all my weight to 1 through 5. And then another validator does the opposite. That's when you have a problem with vtrust. But the way this would work is it still detects which images are like generally good. And then what images like the face is messed up, or like there's 4 arms when there should only be 2, so it ranks it lower. In that sense, it should even itself out, and there should be like a balance between all the validators. So vtrust shouldn't matter too much in that regard. And if it does end up hurting it, then we'll go from there. We'll shift things around, see how it works.
The question I think on everybody's lips is also going to be, when Tau Studio back? Sorry, you know.
When? Yep. Who knows? No. Probably in the next like week or two. I'll have it back up, definitely. I've just been focusing more so. Oh, what were you saying, Mog?
I was going to say, and are you looking forward to and expecting a ramp up in sort of performance now that you have access to an entire subnet worth of miners versus just the ones you were running yourself?
Oh yeah, it's definitely having the throughput is definitely going to help a lot. Before, yeah, like I feel like 5 people would be using the website at one time, and then the website would just die. Like, so it's going to be very nice having more than 5 people being able to use the website at once.
Awesome.
And then Victor says, could different models have different types of seeds or not support seeds? Once the validators change to basically query the miner for a previous image that it's generated with the same seed, your miner is going to have to support seeds. And if it doesn't, then it won't like entirely wreck the performance of your miner. You could have a miner that doesn't have seeds, but it will generally perform worse than other miners that do support seeds. And then Mr. Frank says, generative fill option to Tau Studio will be great. And that is probably going to take a while to add in. I have thought about it, basically using masks to dynamically like create new images. But essentially we'll have to have like the validator system saying like ask the miners to generate a mask for an image and then somehow validate the mask system and then give those masks, basically give the mask and the image back to miners and then score those images back. So that's a whole system on its own that we'll need to add in. So that'll probably come in the next couple of months here. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for dropping in. I guess before we close up on the image subnet, if anyone has any questions related to the launch of the image subnet, the registration and everything that Creative has just said, now is the time if there's any others. Otherwise, I'm going to interject with a brief interval and then hand it over to Victor.
Also, I'd just like to add thank you to everyone who's been staking to Subnet 5. It is very much appreciated. It's not gone unnoticed. But yeah.
Yeah, great work, Creative, for bringing it on. The first new subnet that is like in use.
Hell yeah.
I think it's really one that has an opportunity to bring in a lot of eyes, users' eyes, onto Bittensor. Obviously, trying to get into the AI artists market. So should be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks.
For sure. And I can't wait to see any other networks that pop up and start bringing in more eyeballs. Looking forward to what people have in the works. But yeah, with that, I'll drop off the stage here.
Thanks. Victor, just before I hand over to Niche, otherwise I may actually forget, although it's important just to mention, it's been going around the various channels, but TalStats was updated today. There's been a lot of backwards and forwards in various community and social channels about the APR, especially over the weekend. Over the weekend, TalStats had not been updated to include or to deduct from emissions from APR calculations any tau delegated to subnet 0 plus the subnet owner commissions. So what you were seeing was inflated APR figures, also taking sort of averages and applying them to everyone. So what you now see on the front page of TalStats is what I call a network average APR. If you have a look in the community Telegram, this is explained, and also in the TalStats channel in Discord, it's explained with the formulas used. So on the front of the site, you have a network average, which is a sort of a fair average of all validators, assuming they are functioning correctly across all subnets, and everything is even, shall we say. It's based on the emissions, total emissions and staked issuance. And then on individual validator pages, you do now have individual validator APRs, which I haven't quite updated for subnet 3, but within 20 minutes of this call, or possibly while Victor is speaking, I will update for subnet 3. And they do show the APR of a validator based on their current performance. So an APR obviously being a yearly calculation, the performance of validators changes every epoch. It can go up and down based on parameters such as other validators validating on the subnet, etc., etc. So it's not a wise idea or a given just to assume that because someone has a 0.36% higher than someone else that you should move all of your delegation over. And I really do still encourage people to make intelligent, wise, beneficial choices to the network with their delegation of their stake. I don't think I want to talk any more about that because it's a controversial subject, but there are real APRs, but it's good to understand what influences them, and I'm happy to discuss them in the channel. But now over to the most anticipated part of this call, Mr. Niche.
Thank you very, very much.
Can I just say, Victor, before you become Mr. Niche, you should look up what that means in French.
Oh my God, what does it mean?
I'll see. Wait for my French. I saw Frank was on here. I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay. I'm just gonna see if I can share the sound. If I share, my screen, just to check. Can you hear this?
No,
Like when
we can hear you, but not the screen.
Sorry?
We can hear you, but not the screen.
Okay.
I think you might have it muted, Mog, because I could hear it.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so most people can hear it. I'll just briefly show. Welcome to the NicheNet launch. So today we're launching NicheNet, the network for specialized AI for generating high quality data. Because as we've seen recently with additions such as Phi by Microsoft, high quality data is more valuable than a lot of low quality data. You save compute, you save money, you get better quality. So for the launch, we made this video that is an introduction to Bittensor and to NicheNet. And please feel to share this video. You know about Bittensor already, so I'm just gonna skip to the NicheNet part, and yeah, let's have a look at the introduction here.
The network for specialized or niched models. NicheNet is an AI network built on Bittensor that has a unified reward mechanism using a single validator model for evaluating a wide range of different tasks. This makes it possible to easily add new niches to the network, in turn making the network as a whole more generally competent. Further, on NicheNet, all miners get ELO ratings based on how they compare to other miners in their niche, allowing end users to easily select the miner best suited for their specific use case. Want to learn more about how to use, invest, and build on NicheNet?
Yeah. So that's what NicheNet is. It's a network of specialized AI models with abilities such as storytelling, coding, scientific writing, and general chat. So what we got to ask the question, what is the difference between NicheNet and Subnet 1? And we'll go through some of the technical aspects, although we are also releasing a white paper that will dig much further and deeper into how it actually works on a lower level. But on the high level, what's unique about NicheNet is that we have only one validator model. So we have one large language model that is used for both creating prompts and for filtering responses and for ranking responses compared to each other. So we call this large language model the validator model. Since it's only one model, we can optimize it and have it be very intelligent. For example, if we run 5 different reward models, they can't be that big. They can only be like 1 or 2 billion parameters each, maybe 3. But you are going to struggle to have them all optimized because it's 5 times the work to optimize them. And you're going to struggle to make them highly intelligent because they are limited in size, because of course everyone is limited by GPU, the GPUs they're using. But using one validator model and through prompt engineering, changing all aspects needed for it, we can have a highly intelligent validator model that is easy to maintain and optimize. So the way this validator model will evaluate the network is, first, we, through text, ask it to ask a question about this topic with these seeds. For example, if it's storytelling, we can have some templates for prompts, such as ask someone to write a story using these seeds, and they can be a few random words. It can be a cat, dog, and rainforest. Then we'll ask a question like, write an engaging story about a cat who meets a dog and they travel to Brazil to save the rainforest, or something like that. That way you can get an infinite number of unique prompts. Then you get responses from all the miners, and we will use the same approach that Alpaca Eval uses. Alpaca, we had it there. To compare models, where they let the GPT-4 actually compare models. In this case, they compare these models listed here with, I think it's DaVinci 003, so that's an OpenAI model. And then you can see the win rate of them. We can do the same with the validated model, and we could even use GPT-4 as the validated model, but we won't, primarily because of high cost and centralization. So that way we can generate questions and we can rank the answers, and based on the answers we can rank the models. By the way, I would love it if you add more questions. Thank you, Bard, saying it's great work. And also, I would love to hear all the feedback from you as we go along. I will check it frequently. A bit about incentive structure. It will be heavily geared towards synergy. And synergy means that if your model sometimes gives their best response, meaning it has something unique to add in the way of responses, it will get higher synergy, which will increase the reward. This means that theoretically, if you had one model that always had the best answers, you would get almost all of the reward. So this means that it's not about having a lot of miners, rather it's about having a few high quality miners in order to gain high rewards. It will not be that it's only the highest response that gets rewards, but it will be very much geared towards having these specialized models. So there won't be any, at least not at first, any score given directly towards diversification itself. So it wouldn't be scored to have something different just for the sake of being different, but it will be incentivized to have specialized models. Further, we will have these different categories. Right now, we only have the general chat and the storytelling category implemented. So we might only launch with those two categories. But by adding more and more categories, we also hope to bring more specialization to the network. Further, Synergy allows us to incentivize giving the best responses possible in order to create great data sets. Because when we create data sets, we rather have one really good answer than 5 mediocre ones. And by incentivizing this specialization, the idea is that the combination of these specialized models will give better performance than any single model or lots of general models. Lastly, on one of the bigger updates is rate limits. Validators will be rate limited by miners based on the influence the validators have on the network. And right now, influence is only impacted by the amount of tau the validator have. Just checking a question. Proof of work apparently works on subnet 3, so recommend using proof of work, and you can probably use a CPU only for that as of right now. Secondly, I messed up the screen, sorry. Yeah, there we go. A creative wrote, would be interesting to see if we can get some cross-network pollination going. Maybe have a prompt system to generate stable diffusion prompts given an input prompt, and then the best image score determine which miners will receive score. That is a super interesting question. It might be something that is also subnet 4 might be interested in, Karo's subnet. So yeah, that's a wonderful idea, I think. Sorry, rate limit. So the more tau you have, the higher rate limit you will have. That means the more often you can query miners. Purposely, we will try to make it so that the limit is reasonable, so miners will not really be incentivized to try to cheat too much, but it should be, the rate limit should be high enough so that any validator with at least 10,000 tau should be able to run a proper validator. Because to run a validator, you need to send a certain amount of requests per hour to properly validate, and our goal is to make it possible with 10,000 tau to do so properly. So one example we often say is that validators will be able to, with 10,000 tau, will be able to send one request every 10 minutes to a single miner, and that gives incentive to have more tau staked on the network in order to get more capacity, and it makes the access to a commodity that validators can sell. So now I'm going to go over a bit to the validators' possible business models, and then we're going to talk a bit about what type of miners could benefit from this. So with NicheNet, we have thought of 3 categories of business models you can do, because as a validator, you have a certain access to the network based on your DAO. It might be also added that you can stake specifically to networks, the subnetworks in some way to give you extra access for that, not only based on your DAO, but also on how much emission, for example, you give to it. But we will see how that works out in the future. So here are 3 categories. First of all, validators will be able to sell access keys by setting up a proxy server to just let other people use their validator and use their access to the network. And this can be very easy. You just need to use a pre-written script to set up a proxy server, and then you can sell the key and get paid per week, per month, or per request, or whatever you agree on with the buyer. And with time, I expect there to be multiple buyers and sellers and exchanges growing up around this. Maybe some of the bigger validators will have smaller validators that they also do deals for in order to get greater impact. Second business model is, if you want to be a bit more active as a validator, you could create your own datasets. Let's say you want to create a dataset with storytelling about children's stories, for example. Then you can very easily just change the prompt used for the validator prompt to generate questions, and basically have everything else stay the same. So you would ask the validator model to ask questions related to writing children's stories. The model is quite smart, so it will create those prompts, send them out, and score them all using the same model. You can even change the scoring prompt to say which answer is more child-friendly or easily understandable or uses the simplest English. You can have even multiple templates for scoring and filtering responses. That way you can create very targeted data sets. And of course, since you score the responses, if you get 10 responses, you only need to actually store the best response, assuming you have a good model for actually comparing responses. And by just having the best answers, you get a super high quality data set. Lastly, for those who are very advanced, you can even build your own platform, which is mostly what validators seems to have been interested in so far, and I think a lot of validators will do this as well. Where you basically build an access portal yourself to the network. It can be you create a platform for generating data or for network inference, like Chat with Hal, for example. You can make something similar to that, where you have your own browser of the UIDs and such. Another thing I want to add is that we'll be working on a front end where you will be able to scan all the miners on the network. You will see their ELO given by the validator. So the ELO is basically their ranking compared to other miners in their category. And then you will also see of course, the category they're in, and they will be able to also add tags. And tags at first will not do anything, but eventually we will add more functionality to tags. For example, the option to give incentive to certain tags and tests for certain tags to see if they are being followed properly. Here on the page, it's nichenet.nichetensor.com. We also built a calculator how much you could potentially earn with a validator on this network. Because one thing that will really explode tau's value is when the value gotten out of a subnet is greater than the earnings of the miners. What I mean by that is that if it's more profitable to use the network than to just get the tau that miners are given, that means there's a very real and direct profit to holding tau on that network. So this is a simple calculation you can play around with. I have the full calculation here, but it's basically based on tau and percentage of emission to NicheNet. That basically calculates, okay, how much emission do you give to the network? Oh, also this matters. Then you get the tau price. You get the what the miners need to earn and what the I don't know why it's like that. You get what the validator can sell the requests for, and that calculates the score per day. I don't know why it's like that. And you can see if miners earn as much as validators per request, like then you can't have a high. You don't have such great margins, but we can see that if miners only earn half as much tau as validators, you can suddenly double the profit as a validator by having on this subnet. And I think this will really grow tau's value when we can get this type of like added value from using the network, and that's something we're working towards. So this is like just a calculator if you want to play around with. So I'm gonna take a short stop there and say, do we have questions or comments so far? I'm very excited to have calls with all validators to hear, like, what are your thoughts? What are your values? Do you want something that is super simple to set up, or are there many people interested in building actual applications? What is it you value? And we have 2 people writing, so that's super exciting. Bard says, I like the concept of niche tensor. Can't wait to get started towards that subnet. I think it will create a lot of value. Thank you very much, Bard. We are working hard to try to make that a reality. Looking great, Mr. Niche. Can't wait to mess around with this and start setting up that pollination. Haha. Yeah, that's really exciting. I think it will be very interesting to see how the different subnets will be able to integrate with each other quite naturally to build an entire Bittensor infrastructure between subnets.
Can you drop that URL into the chat so people can have a little read over in their own time?
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's going to be one of very similar to Caro. It's one of those moments where I'm thinking to myself, I need to listen to this again tomorrow, and then have some more questions. There's a lot to cover in there, but it's very, very interesting.
Neural Internet says, can't wait to expand Neural Internet's platform to support niche tensor. Yeah, it will be really great. Yeah, I have a question for chat. Those who were in the call early know I already asked Mog this, but if you are a miner or a validator, how would you prefer to communicate with me and other subnet owners? Do you prefer these weekly calls? Do you prefer one-on-one calls? Or do you have other ideas? Because, of course, all subnet creators want to hear from the validators and miners, and all miners and validators probably want to hear from the subnet creators as well. So if you have ideas there, happy to hear it. Someone said before that we can add groups in Tau community for each subnet, which is a great solution. But if you have ideas or suggestions, just please drop it in in chat. Okay, so for miners, why mine on NicheNet? Well, I think NicheNet has the potential of creating the most high quality data sets for machine learning models. This is a very novel field. You're working with new cutting edge technology, and you will probably doing a lot of work specializing models. So this is quite machine learning heavy, learning how to optimize the models, probably iteratively. I think it will be less about scalability. It will not be that much about having many models, but it will be more about having fewer models with high quality. Also, as we will start out as a data generation only subnet, there will also be more generosity given in time to generate responses. Because if you're chatting, you want responses quite quickly. If you're generating a data set, you don't really care if it's 10 seconds, 12 seconds, or even 20 seconds. With that said, it might not be the easiest subnets for beginners with AI. Yeah, so it might be other subnets that are more suitable for people with less AI expertise. With that, we will here is the wrong site. We are still working on the code, although we have created like a first draft that seems to be working quite well. And if you're interested in having a call to go over the code and maybe give feedback on it and hear a bit more from us, then I'm more than happy to do so. For now, we will probably actually do some testing for maybe 1 or 2 weeks before registering a subnet. And the suggestions given before was, I can drop those GitHub links. Given before is that maybe we should take a week after subnet launch with no or extremely little incentive. These links, they don't have much on them right now in terms of documentation, but it's on these links that there will come updated code in the future.
Do you see particularly inflated hardware requirements to the current subnet 1 or similar to what's required for subnet 1 for validating and mining?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question, actually. You only need to run one model, which means you can probably have it extremely optimized. And since everyone will be running the same model, that means that we can have inference with a highly optimized framework such as VLLM or TGI or TensorRT. And what you will do is you will simply set up one GPU, like a 4090 GPU, which is very cheap, and you can run on that. Probably one 4090 GPU will even be enough for multiple validators to validate. One thing we're really trying to do is we don't want all the Bittensor emission to go into compute. We're not trying to force miners to run a lot of GPUs just for the sake of using GPUs. We will allow some miners to use the same answer multiple times if that can save compute, because we think it's better to just have that emission go to the miners and to the validators than going into covering costs. With that said, we will make it super easy. Like, you can already set weights for free, basically, because you need a little bit of CPU. You can set weights by copying weights for free. So I think probably most validators will do that on most networks because
What happened? Did we lose Victor? I think we did. Unexpected takeover. I wasn't ready for that. Don't really think I want to add into his. I can let you know that subnet 3 is now available on dall-e, and Victor is back. Did a catwalk on your keyboard?
you might think so. I don't know what happened there. Just my computer having some hiccups. Well, as I see it now, most validators are passive, and there's probably going to be some problems if we don't change with validators just copying weights and not actually validating, which could be a problem if those that actually do validate actually use their power to like strengthen their own miners. But apart from that, I think it's just good if we can find ways to save compute, to have as like low requirements as possible for the validators, and ideally reward the validators that does run proper validation. There are some ideas for this that I know the foundation are thinking about, so I think they will implement it on their side. That validators that do proper validating will get some reward for that, and those that just want to copy weights will be able to do so if they just want to invest and casually sit back. Bard says, yeah, if we have the best answer, we should focus on making more answers that are good. Yeah, not sure exactly, like, yeah, for creating data sets. Yeah, we basically only care about the best answers for data sets because that's what we want to train on. We don't want to train on the less
I've got
good.
some questions for you, Victor. Do you see NicheNet as a replacement for Subnet 1 eventually, or as something that runs alongside it and is different? Honest answers, please.
Well, I think the focus is very different. NicheNet is focusing on creating specialized data set in different categories. The goal is to make it so flexible that anyone can easily set up their own tags and specialization to get specialized models running, while Subnet 1 is for general models, and so far I think it's been primarily for like real-time inference rather than dataset. So I think it's very clear distinctions to be drawn there.
Well, I'll tell you why I asked the question. Obviously, the overbearing comparison that's made with anything that's built on a text prompting network is to ChatGPT, and of course, the quality of the text of Subnet 1 hasn't been there with GPT based on the amount of context that can be returned, lack of streaming, time to return, and the forced diversity in the responses by the miners, often just not giving you the simplest, best answer if you're using it in a side-by-side comparison. Would you think that with the right setup, NicheNet could be used to build a better chat application than the current ones that have been built and relying on Subnet 1?
That's a great question. I think it's easier said than done with such chat applications. I think I think the immediate solutions could be to add like a category that is very straightforward, just gets the best answer, and you would probably only get GPT-4 answers from that, or ChatGPT answers if the cost is too high. I think that is doable. I'm not sure what the value of that would be though, because if you just get ChatGPT responses, why not just use ChatGPT?
Costs.
With that said, I also think there is definitely enough room on Bittensor for multiple text prompting networks. One for datasets, one for inference. We might even see like one for coding only, and it will only be coding subnet. We have the machine translation subnet. We'll hear more about next week, and I don't think that competes. Like, sure, you could say that the text prompting subnet 1 can also do the translations, or like if it's as good as GPT-4, it could do it. But I still think there are different niches for the subnetworks, and I think it's better for us to focus on doing datasets really well, rather than doing datasets kind of well and inference kind of well, regardless of how subnet 1 works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's an actual very interesting question. We might get competing, or we definitely will get competing subnets in the future, and it will be interesting to see the dynamic play out. Wonderful question.
Amazing. Well, I think at that point we should thank you and open up to any final questions, as we've wonderfully hit the 1 hour mark. Unless you had anything else to add on to the end of it, Victor?
No, that was all. Thank you very much, Marg, and everyone here for listening in.
I think next week we will highly likely focus on. I'll see if we can get. But I've already heard you have the scraping subnet coming in next week to talk about the scraping subnet, and any other subnets that might be launched in between now and then. It's going to be. Let's see what happens this week.
Yeah, exactly. We will have both the machine translation subnet and the web scraping subnet, it looks like, next week.
Amazing.
Amazing.
I had to read that slowly. Creative, effective accelerationism. There you go.
Yeah.
On that note,
Yeah.
thank you. Good night, good afternoon to whoever you are, and thank you.
Thank you.